Boom. What's up, everyone? Welcome to episode 77 of the RUDIS Wrestling Podcast. Matt, we missed last week. It was kind of the first time in forever. You were super busy. I was super busy with Funky Fresh Camp. And so we missed a week. But, you know, we can catch up this week. We'll play super speed and kind of get everyone in touch with everything that's going on.
Yeah, I know you were, that Funky Fresh was your last week of summer camp, right?
Last week, 18 camps, all done now. We had a great summer. We were super busy. Matt, Funky Fresh, I was impressed by the statistic, and I didn't even figure it out until I was talking to the kids when we were taking them to the airport. We had kids from 28 states at one camp.
No kidding.
Yeah, I thought that was pretty impressive.
How's that compared to a year ago?
I don't remember doing it last year, so we did increase the capacity of the camp by a little bit. You know, I've always been, say, between 16 and 20. Somewhere in there. But to jump all the way to 28, I thought that was a pretty good jump.
That's awesome.
More than half the country was represented, so it was great.
Nice.
Hey, I gotta right away. The thing that popped out to me yesterday: Zain not wrestling at Pan Ams.
That was huge, right? Especially with everything else.
It popped out. Matt, does it say to you that Zain is now getting ready for Yianni, or thinks he might have to get ready for Yianni? Because that's what it said to me.
Or he is just completely focused on being 100% healthy for the World Championships, and he may feel like, I'm sure he can go from the things I've heard. If he absolutely had to go to Pan Ams, I think he could.
But they said he was only going to be out 12 days. That's what they said, 12 days. And now, I mean, so again, this is what I come back to. You don't have to tell me.
There's a difference between being out for 12 days and being ready to compete in 12 days, right?
Sure. Well, I mean, they didn't specify that when they put the statement out, but you don't have to. You're under no obligation to tell me, but just don't lie to me. Why are you lying? It drives me crazy. But I think, so they moved, remember, so we know that they moved last week. Penn State moved to dismiss the case. I believe that was not held up. So they are having this week, they're having the Yianni versus Zain. It's not a lawsuit. What do they call it again?
It's arbitration.
It's called arbitration. Yes, thank you. So they're doing that this week. So hopefully we'll know soon enough.
So now, and I know you have more conversations with Yianni directly, especially you had a podcast with him. Now, will the final decision be made this week, or will it be? Will it still be extended beyond this?
I don't know that is the case for sure. That's the way it seems to me. And even when I talk to Yianni about it every once in a while, it's this is a new process. This is not like a process that happens all the time. So even he is like, well, I think this was going to happen, but I'm not sure. Does that make sense?
And I think he's doing a great job. It's like he's just staying in his lane. Like it seems like
he went and wrestled in Poland last week and he won that, so he's staying busy too.
Yeah, so it just seems like, hey, from where Yianni's sitting is like, hey, there's a lot of things outside of my control. The wrestling is stuff I can control, so I'm going to just stay on my pace, stay in my lane. Obviously, I think he and his coaches have laid out, not only are they preparing for Worlds, but they're already preparing for the Olympic trials. And I think regardless of the outcome of this circumstance, he's preparing himself for whichever scenario plays out, and he's going to be prepared as best he can either way.
I guess we kind of assumed this, but Rob Cole came out and officially stated that Yianni will be, in fact, Olympic redshirt next year. I think we all assumed that would be the case. And the other thing that I thought was interesting about Poland, Musakayev, who had the great match with Yianni multiple weeks ago, I believe that was in Turkey, he forfeits to him. Could you believe that?
Well, after the last match? Heck yeah, I can.
Dude, after the last match, you got me thinking, I'm up 9-0. I just got to get one more. I got to get one more point. I got to get one more. I can do one more. That's what I'd be thinking at least.
Yeah, but after that last match, he's like, well, I better take 2 months for the next opportunity. If I'm going to get this, I better prepare a little bit more than I was, because Yianni's definitely going to be and that's the thing that Yianni's really shown the capacity to do, is jump. As soon as he feels that opponent for the first time, he's a different animal the second time around. And so, yeah, Musakayev might have jumped up 9-0, But what Yianni did after that and what he did to him in the second period, I think shows, and we've talked about it at length, his ability to adapt, adjust to each opponent, and especially after he feels that person for the first time.
And I would say it's probably unlikely that he would ever get up 9-0 again, but you never know. I mean, I was trying to put it in Musa Kayev's thought process. Okay, Cadet Worlds were last week. I guess, we're not going to cover that extensively. We had one champ in Mark Anthony McGowan from Florida. He looked really good. I would say that the rest of the men's, the Greco team struggled mightily. They had no one win more than their match. The women's team had a whole bunch of placers.
Their best performance ever, I believe. The women was the best
women? Really?
cadet performance ever. I believe so. Don't quote me on that, but I'm pretty sure it was.
I'm definitely quoting you. I'm gonna tweet that later. Women's best performance ever, and then I'm gonna have that in parentheses and then Matt Dernlan at the end. So come back on you, not me. So for the cadet men's freestyle, I mean, I would say it wasn't a bad performance, but compared to what they've been having the last few years, I gotta think that it's kind of a letdown. Is that fair?
Well, I think this is great. I think we're becoming the victim of our own expectations, which is a great thing. What we've been able to do at the age group.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, absolutely.
It's great that we're finally getting this is a letdown. Well, a decade ago, if we had one medalist at the Cadet Worlds or Junior Worlds, we'd say, hey, there's some positive things looking towards the future. But what we've been able to do this decade and the level of performance at all age group levels, I think this is great. We're becoming the victims of our own expectations. Hey, we might have underperformed in relation to the last 3 or 4 years. So I think that's a great thing.
Yeah, I agree. So, like you're saying, I thought we had, compared to the last couple years, not a great performance. But overall, I mean, when I watched the matches and I watched almost all of them, there wasn't anyone I'm like, it's like the other guy's really good. This guy's really good. The other guy's really good. There was no one I'm like, that was terrible. I mean, I felt overall pretty good about the cadet performance. We have the juniors coming up next week, which, the older they get, the more into it I am. I can't get that into cadets. It's just too young. I like it, but I'm not all the way in. Juniors, I'm more in. Seniors, obviously, I'm all the way into seniors. But I know we want to talk, Matt, and I'm curious because I'm not even armed with this information. I am interested to hear and I have not listened to FRL yet. I'm interested to hear what your take is on NWC Coaches Clinic, which I think you were at for the full time last week.
Yes. So there was a lot of, at the NWCA convention, there's always breakout sessions where they introduce new legislation or possible new legislation, talking points within the sport that need to be addressed. A lot of these things evolve over time because you just can't say, I want to make a change now, snap your fingers and move this forward. But, on the table for discussion, obviously the RTCs were probably the biggest thing. I know that was the biggest.
Let's go. I want to hear it. Come on.
But I think it's good to talk about some other things. Maybe we do this tomorrow contextually, but I think the other important things that were being discussed is a one semester sport.
Well, I want the RTC. Give me the dirt, Matt. Let's go.
Okay. So RTC.
I want the dirt.
Everything, there's been talk behind the scenes for the last 5-6 years about a competitive advantage being given to programs that are deeply invested in their RTCs, that there's a competitive
Penn
advantage.
State, Ohio State, Iowa, who else?
Cornell.
Virginia Tech.
Iowa
State's got a good one.
Yeah, Iowa State. I know the New Jersey RTC, which is kind of shared,
that's
shared between
one.
Princeton and Rutgers. And I think the big debate is, are there recruiting advantages? I
think there are.
With rooms being accessible to kids, who's accessible, who can come into the rooms and compete. The funding of athletes, the actual resident athletes that train in the same university facility as their RTC. Should there be a clear separation between if you're at the Pennsylvania RTC? Should these athletes have to work out at a separate standalone facility outside of the university? So there's a lot of, but then on the flip side of that,
But so let me ask you this, Matt. Let me ask you this, because I wasn't there, and I heard like a few seconds of FRL. So, but I want to know the full details. Is that it? So after all this discussion is had, and we're going to talk about the discussion is had. After all this discussion is had, is there changes that are made? Is it recommendations? Is it suggestions? Where does it fall exactly?
I think it's typical with something of this nature. They form a task force.
Okay.
Of collectively throughout the community, they appoint different leaders within the sport on this task force that really review and dissect how RTCs are being run, how they're being monitored, regulated, how they are being enforced by the NCAA. So there's a number of different levels outside of just the talking points. Are RTCs good or bad? That's the simple argument, and that's kind of the takeaway that you could take from the convention is, are RTCs good or bad for the sport of wrestling, and specifically
so
for the
you
sport
say
of college wrestling?
All the guys in that room, which way do they lean?
I think there's a division, and I think that's where.
Is it a clear division, or are people all over the board?
I think they're all over the board. Obviously, for the programs that are having success and seeing tangible success by their RTCs, they're being propped up and saying, "Hey, look what this is doing for the overall growth of the sport and success of wrestling at the senior level." Right?
Which so for me, Matt, that's the argument. The argument would be, do we care more about the overall growth of the sport and health of the United States versus other countries, or do we care more about the fairness of the college competition? I think for me, that's the argument, because if your answer is A, then you're going to be in favor of RTCs. If your answer is B, you're against RTCs, because we know, I'm not going to say it or who, but people are cheating with RTCs. There's absolutely 100%. There's no doubt about that fact. That is true. And so if you care about the fairness of the college competition,
I would
people are cheating.
That. Well,
which one? People are cheating.
That's the easiest argument for people to say, is that people are cheating. Well, give me evidence. Give me evidence. Show me how people are abusing.
Don't make me get some evidence. I'll find that evidence.
Hey, give me some clear, concrete evidence.
I'll ruin people's lives. Find me some evidence.
Yes, not rumor or innuendo, right?
I'm gonna hire a PI. I'm gonna hire a private investigator now out of my own pocket. Well, somehow I'm gonna figure out RUDIS's bank account password. I'm gonna use the RUDIS funds. I'm gonna pay for a private investigator. So next time we come on this podcast, I have concrete evidence for you.
Okay. Yeah, but you know what? You take away the RTCs, and there's going to be that next program that's accusing another program of something, salacious as far as what they're doing, how they're recruiting, what they're doing. I mean, there's always going to be finger pointing going on.
The college coaches I'm not the only one making innuendos. The college coaches are making innuendos at each other about who's cheating. Let's be clear on that.
And what I would say, you know what? Call each other out. My frustration as a former college
they are a little bit scared to call each other out.
Behind the scenes, there's people complaining, well, this program's doing this, that program's doing that. Well, if you have a problem with it, you have a room at the NWCA. Be man enough to point your finger at another coach like, I got a problem with what you're doing. This is not only what I've heard, this is what I know you're doing. You're abusing this system. You're abusing our policies. I'm going to call you out in front of our whole committee, in front of our whole convention, as opposed to like talking behind each other's back. If you got something to say, point your finger at that person and say, I think you're abusing the system. Not only do I think you're in the gray area, I think you're all the way in the black. I think you're breaking rules here. Right?
Because
so be a man.
If guys like you and I, who we're kind of on the inside, but we're not really on the inside. We're not in the trenches every single day like some of these college coaches. If we're hearing all these rumors, that they're hearing them times 10. Plus, there is a decent chance they have some actual factual evidence of the cheating that is going on.
Yeah, I'm not saying that's the thing, Ben. I'm not saying there aren't abuses that are going on within the RTC system, but you know what? Yeah. Let's call it out. Let's bring it, call it out, bring it to the carpet, and shed the light. Let's raise the curtain behind what's going on here and really regulate this in a strict manner, because in the 10 years that the RTCs that have been, I would say it's been almost a decade where the RTCs are really relevant within a college program, would you say?
Uh-huh.
And
Yeah,
I
that
think
sounds good.
From where
maybe
it
a little
started,
less, Matt. Maybe a few years less.
Yeah, maybe. I think at a high level. I think there's on the periphery, there's some forerunners. I think there's 2 or 3 programs that you could really call out that really went all in to develop the RTCs. And, the amount of interaction from the NCAA and the legislation that they've tried to introduce, I think it's been murky at best over the last decade to really clarify some of these situations and articulate what is right and wrong and have a true vetting process about how these things should go. But yeah, I think if you got a problem, call it out. Like that was always my problem as a college coach when people say, well, that guy's breaking every rule in recruiting. Well, call him out, turn him in then. Well, no, if I do that, then somebody might call me out because,
it's one of those things, Matt, that old saying, if you can't throw rocks, if you live in a glass house,
right?
Can't throw rocks, you live in a glass house, bro.
And that's the thing, Ben, like with
so now, Matt, I see what you're saying. You're making innuendos right now. You're making innuendos that they're all cheating. That's your innuendo right now.
What I'm telling them what I'm saying they should do.
Matt, and I'm going to take this step further. You're saying I'm cheating because I'm an RTC coach, and I'm going to say, in fact, I am not cheating.
Hey, Ben, I would say you're the head coach of the Badger RTC. If you're not,
we changed our name. We changed our name. We're the Wisconsin RTC.
The Wisconsin RTC. If you are not pushing the boundaries of every rule that's out there for you, then you're not saying that you really want to compete at the highest level.
I'll tell you the problem, Matt. I'll tell you the problem. I don't have enough money to cheat. If you gave me $1 million, now I'm gonna start cheating. I don't got $1 million yet. If you give the Wisconsin RTC
right?
$1 million, we're gonna start throwing some offers out here and there under the table. But we don't have that much money. We're just we're really 1 year into the process. We're starting to raise some decent money. But some of these people have
my problem is with some of these programs that are financially in a great situation with their RTCs.
Yes.
Why penalize them for doing their job? Maybe they have an easier time raising money or they have greater access to funding than other RTCs. But you know what?
Yes.
That's the reality of life. Don't say, I have a problem fundamentally with people saying you have money. That's not fair because I don't have access to this money.
That's fair.
Right?
I'm good with that.
So, number one, go out and raise more money. It may be harder, but look at Rob Cole. And a lot of people give Rob a lot of crap, but that guy busts his tail to raise money for his RTC. I see what he's done. I just got an email from him today about a fundraising initiative.
Did you donate?
I'm gonna try to.
But if you donate, the Wisconsin RTC is gonna send you an email tomorrow.
yeah. But I mean, there's realities to everyone's existence. Now, this is a guy that I admire and respect more than anybody in the world of wrestling, and that's John Smith. John Smith he hates RTCs. He hates RTCs. Why? Fundamentally, he doesn't like the funding that these athletes are getting and John, when he came through, and it's well documented, like once he started getting more money, once he started becoming more successful, he said he thought that was detrimental to his focus and his training. So
that's John Smith's reasoning?
Well, I think
that's
part of it. He when John was winning his world and Olympic titles, he lived a very Spartan lifestyle. And I think to this day, he believes that there's an element of that each athlete should live with, that element of suffering. I think for him, it allowed him to keep his edge, keep his focus, keep his drive, which is fine for him. But in this day and age,
I don't disagree with that.
But, my problem with Okie State not wanting to fund their RTC at a certain level, it's not because they can't do it. Ben, right?
They got T. Boone Pickens.
They have T. Boone Pickens and a ton of very influential donors that could contribute to the RTC. So him saying, I don't want this, well, you have access to the same amount of money that Ohio State does, that Penn State does, that Cornell has.
Yes.
But you're choosing not to direct your funding at your RTC, and to say that RTC should no longer exist, I have a problem with that.
Hey, you know, one thing I would push back on John Smith on that one for is, you know, because I don't disagree that the more money you get, hey, it's Conor McGregor, right? The more money you get, the less you want to get in a ring with a half naked man and fight him. I mean, it's not something people with lots of money want to do. Same thing with wrestling, right? Even less glory and fame associated with it. But the one thing that they didn't have in 1992 or 1988 when John Smith was around was the sport of mixed martial arts. The sport of mixed martial arts took me out of the game. It took Daniel out of the game. It took Henry out of the game. It's taken a lot of us out of the game. And I've said this multiple times, Matt. If in 2009, if I was making what a lot of these RTC athletes are making, I never would have left. I never would have done MMA. I would have always kind of wanted to, but I never would have went down it because I would have been so satisfied with the money I was making doing wrestling, and I loved wrestling. I never would have ever left. That's a fact.
And that's the thing, Ben. For the longest time, you know, we're our own worst enemies, right? For the longest time, it's like, we bitch and we moan about, we don't get exposure, we don't get funding, we don't have access to sponsorship dollars. Well, all of a sudden in the last decade, that reality has changed. Like, these RTCs can fund athletes where they can just solely focus on training. And now there's, you know, an argument about depleting the coaching ranks because, you know, a lot of these athletes, they don't have to coach. They can just go and train full time. Yep. But, you know, the thing that we complained against, now we're complaining because we have more funding for these athletes. I'm like, hey,
I think it's as simple as people don't like change. People have a hard time with changes. Yes. So when things are changed significantly, they can't say, okay, how do we adapt to this? Because the fact that our athletes are competing longer and staying in the sport of wrestling, that's effing fantastic. That is fantastic. Yeah. And there should be zero complaints about that fact.
Yeah, and you know, I think this is the hard thing too. And you tried to draw a line and separate the two of like, okay, where's the difference between doing what's best for your program and doing what's best for the sport of wrestling? And I think this is where, you know, fundamentally a lot of coaches, when the rubber meets the road, what are they going to do? They're going to fight for their program first, and they should, right?
Yeah.
Because
so that's their job. That's their paycheck.
I don't think it can be argued that the RTCs have been phenomenal for USA Wrestling and for our country and for senior level athletes, right?
Yes, phenomenal.
Has it been ideal? Has there been a competitive advantage that have been given other programs because they're more invested in their RTCs? Yes.
But Matt, maybe you can speak to this, because this is outside my range of time. But I mean, it appears to me when I look back on history that the Hawkeye Wrestling Club had a whole bunch of people training there in, say, the late 80s, the early 90s. And so obviously that to me, that feels really similar to what an RTC is. And, you know, in the early 2000s, I don't think it was as prevalent that you had that many guys at one place. But the Hawkeye Wrestling Club had it in the late 80s and early 90s.
Yeah, and I guess we would probably have to form our own task force to see what have been the tangible, real benefits of these RTCs. Because the one thing I see, you know, what I hear people complaining about is, well, it's a competitive advantage for Ohio State or Penn State. But I would argue, look at the parity it's created. Look at what the New Jersey RTC is doing. Look at what Rutgers is doing. Look at what Princeton is doing. And there's got to be some semblance of a byproduct of what the New Jersey RTC and the benefit it's given to both those programs. So we want to single out the Penn States, but I would say look at what Virginia Tech's doing. Look at what Rutgers is doing. Look at what Columbia is doing. Yep. Look at what Cornell's doing. I mean, there's more parity in the sport now, directly or indirectly, because of these RTCs as opposed to a decade ago. And that's great for the sport of wrestling. Is it making more college coaches work harder? Yes. Well, work harder. Work harder. Yeah. Right? Yeah. When have we ever shied away from work? But all of a sudden we're saying, I don't want to work that hard, or pointing a finger is like, it's giving this program a recruiting advantage, that program a competitive advantage. Well, work harder. You know, that's been a mantra that we've always tried to stand on top of as a sport of wrestling, and to look back and to say, I don't like this. I want to take my ball home. Let's destroy this thing that's been obviously so good for the sport of wrestling. Why would we do away with something like this? It's just absurd.
Okay. You got me sold, Matt. I'm all in. So, okay, let's just final thought of leaving the weekend, leaving the coaches convention. You got to say in 3 years, based on what happened last weekend, are the RTCs here or no?
I think they're here, but I think they're going to be dramatically changed. I think
Really?
there's going to be a lot more
Wow.
a lot more regulations. I think there's going to be a clear separation between RTCs and college programs. But I still think they'll work in the same proximity to each other, just not as closely tied as they have currently been.
The separate buildings thing or separate wrestling rooms, that seemed pretty stupid.
That's stupid.
That was so dumb. Like, listen, why do we got to make 2 different wrestling rooms? I mean, come on, man. This is ridiculous.
Because what they're going to do.
One team can only use it 2 hours out of day out of 24, for God's sakes. Give me a break.
Yeah, I think it's an inefficient way. It's a waste of funding. It really is a waste of funding if you're going to build your own standalone facility. Well, what are they going to do?
Yeah,
let's say
so
Ohio
dumb.
State. Ohio State's going to say, "Oh, we can't train in the Cavelli Center today. Well, we're going to train in the RTC across the street or off like somewhere in Columbus, Ohio. You're going to go and take all their guys." Yeah.
Yeah, it's totally absurd. Hey, so you know what? You know where I was last weekend?
Where?
I was at the X Games. I was making an appearance with UFC. Do you know where the X Games was?
No, I've been out of the loop for the last 2 weeks.
Well, I wouldn't have, Matt, I would not have known the answer either, so I don't blame you. It was in Minneapolis, Minnesota. Hot damn, US Bank Stadium is fantastic. That got me so excited for NCAAs next year. Now I don't know what the seating thing is going to look like. But
they sold out. Okay, this is
okay. I'm curious to hear about this.
So, and I didn't get to sit in on this meeting, but I heard some coaches talking about it. I think currently they've sold just less than 20,000 seats already for Minnesota next year. I think their goal is I think they've already sold just under 20,000 tickets. I think they want to unveil a plan to maybe grow it close to 40,000, which would be unbelievable.
So the whole arena sits 60. So I was curious how they do it because the whole arena seats 66. Obviously, if you're looking at a football field, 8 wrestling mats does not take up that much space when you're talking about an entire football field. So obviously, you probably have some floor seating of some sort. But then the other thing is, if you get way up top, you do get pretty far away from the action. It's kind of a lot harder to see. So how far up can you really get before it gets too far up to be at a wrestling event? I mean,
now,
that's kind of... Dude, it was so cool. The arena was so cool, man.
Do they have one of those huge video boards like the Dallas Cowboys have?
It's gigantic. So it's on the one. It was on the one side of the facility. It wasn't above the field like the Cowboys, but it was. I mean, hundreds of feet. I don't know the exact length, but it was gigantic.
So do you think that would that actually help?
That would help, but obviously you couldn't put all 8 mats up on that.
Yeah.
I don't believe. Yeah, it was just such a cool venue. Downtown Minneapolis is really cool. Speaking of that, when I come down to the RUDIS Summit in 2 weeks, you and I, we're getting on a computer and we're going to book ourselves an Airbnb, nice and convenient, so we can nail it, knock out our podcast like we did last year, and nice. Have a good time doing it. Yeah.
No, I'm excited for it. I've just heard people raving about the facility. If people haven't been to the Minneapolis, St. Paul area, awesome town. Awesome.
Yeah,
town.
that too, man.
I think it's going to be great.
I never spent that much time at downtown Minneapolis, and they got those scooters, scooter where you rent the scooters. Man, I cruised around for about 90 minutes one night, and then about 45 minutes the next day.
Now, were you that scooter guy that totally disregarded any rule? Stop.
Middle finger to everybody. No, I do the stoplights. I do the stoplights, but not much else. Just the stoplights. But yeah, so I couldn't believe how clean it was. Everything was like nice and new. There's a lot of really cool eating venues, a lot of cool parks. Man, I just feel like it's going to be such awesome. I mean, the only thing that could obviously ruin it in March in Minneapolis is really, really, really terrible weather. But I think there's a chance we get some, sunny and 55-degree days, which will make man, a great event. It was just gonna be. I was just getting so excited about it when I was there, spending time in the venue.
And it's gonna be relatively fan friendly, right? I mean, you can close proximity to your hotel, bars, restaurants, right in walking distance within the arena. So I think it's going to be everything I've heard. At least it should just be. Like you said, outside of weather, which is something you can't control, but outside of that, I think it just hits the mark on every level for a host site.
I would have to look at it, Matt, but there was like a small train. It wasn't a train. It was, I don't know if you call it a trolley, or I don't know exactly what terminology you use for it, but right outside. I mean, you walk 100 feet and there's this like train station, which then I'm sure would take you to a hotel that's 5 miles away without having to drive a car in or any of that, any of that junk. That makes sense.
Yeah. No, I'm excited.
Yeah, so excited. Okay, well, where else do you want to go today? I'm sorry. All we talked about from the coaches convention was the RTCs, and I got distracted on the Minneapolis thing. What else do we want to talk about from the coaches convention?
Okay, there was three other talking points that they're not new, but I think that the sport is still trying to come to grips with, moving forward, what's some of the best things for the sport. There's discussion again, and this has been ongoing for probably 5 years, about switching the college season to a one semester sport and the pros and cons of that.
Okay, gun to your head right away, in favor or not in favor?
I would be in favor of it.
Me too.
Yeah.
So what'd they say?
I think you're split down the middle again about the benefits of this. Obviously, the talking points surrounding the benefits of a one semester sport. One, it doesn't pull our student athletes away from the classroom over 2 semesters.
Great. I like that.
Also goes hand in hand with the APR discussion, the academic performance rate of college wrestling programs. We're still in the bottom.
Because you said that we were struggling with that.
Yeah,
right?
we're typically in the bottom quarter of the APR overall of the 30 plus NCAA Division I sports. We're in the bottom quarter, and I think there's reasons for that we could get into as well. But one of the benefits, one of the pros that they try and sell as a one semester sport is you're not pulling athletes out of the classroom over the course of 2 semesters, so you can really prioritize your academic focus a little bit better. It's a little bit more manageable if you don't have to compete over 2 semesters. And then there is talk, and I'm not a big, I would like to hear your thought about this, is I know there's always talk, well, we compete against March Madness. I don't think we do. Yeah. I think we're only in our own niche. But one thing is like, well, if we bump back our national championship to April, would it be different? Would we actually get more exposure? Which I
think we could get a little more exposure. I don't think it's like gigantic. I don't think that crossover between wrestling and basketball is that big. But I think maybe if it's a 10% bump or a 20% bump. Because that weekend that we usually have NCAAs is opening weekend of the NCAA basketball tournaments. There's 48 games or something that weekend, which is just a gigantic amount of television time. So I think I don't, like I said, I don't think it's make or break, but
I guess on the flip side of that, what I would maybe introduce, and I would want to get your thought is for the fan of wrestling, we're very seasonal, and a lot of our fans, once they're done with wrestling season, they transition into the spring. They track and field, baseball, different things. They get involved in other activities. Do you think the same amount of people would travel in April or May to the NCAA tournament as opposed to March, which is right on the heels of their NCAA tournament? They've been following,
I mean, I would venture to guess the answer to that is yes, Matt. I mean, I guess one thing I would say about the data that is now is a lot of people just had their end of the year folk style stuff, their high school state, and so they've probably been doing some traveling for that, or usually most high school states have multiple weekends of say Wisconsin's regional sectionals, then individual state, then team states. So we had 4 weekends in a row of stuff. So, some people I think feel like they needed a break after that. So maybe that would give them that break they needed. But then I know some people also treat it as, hey, we just got done with high school season. Let's go watch NCAAs as kind of our getaway.
Right.
If that makes sense.
Right.
So,
like that, for a lot of these people that are coaching in the sport or involved in the sport, this is their release where they can just truly be a fan. They can go to the NCAA tournament. Yeah. And they can just be a fan.
I mean, Matt, the one thing I would say about the April date, I would see if there's a way to move it earlier, because the April date, that starts hurting our freestyle stuff, because almost all of our major freestyle tournaments are in April, as far as domestic stuff. So
now, let me ask you this.
I guess maybe you could start pushing that back. I don't know, but then I guess then we would have access. We'd have access to the U23 Worlds, because that's in November. No one wrestles in that, so I guess that would be a positive.
And there's been this has been a very small portion of this one semester discussion is, would you actually move it to the fall? Or is there any merit to moving wrestling into the fall season as opposed to the spring season?
I mean, if we're talking about freestyle, I mean, domestically, it's much better. I mean, if you look at it domestically, Matt, the best would be to have it which is not going to work because the high school's tournaments, but to have it in February sometime. Then you'd have, say, a 2-month gap till all your major domestic freestyle stuff, which would be, I think, more ideal probably from a training standpoint. And obviously, very few guys are making a senior level world team. So the only one affected then would be U23s in the fall. So I think when you look at that, that's not such a bad thing, bad option either. But I didn't really foresee it as an issue while I was in college. But I think, looking at it now from an objective standpoint, if we could move it to a 1 semester thing, I'd see that as a huge positive over the multi-semester.
Now there is one more layer to this, and I don't think this will ever take ground, but there is a contingent of coaches that really think there should be 2 different championships awarded.
I actually love that idea, although I don't think it's ever going to happen.
The discussion there between having a dual meet champion and a tournament champion would be, you have 2 different seasons. You have a dual meet season and then a tournament championship season. And then that would create 2 different championship seasons. So you'd actually maybe compete. You would split it up into 2 semesters, just 2 seasons. Similar to
I don't like that. I don't like
indoor,
that.
like an indoor track season, outdoor track season type of that. I don't think for so many different reasons. Ideally for the fan of wrestling, we would love to see that. That would be like the ideal scenario, right?
I think it would be great. Yeah, that would be great. I would really, really love to see that. And I think, and we've went over this before, I don't think the NCAA tournament is the ideal way to measure team success. Although, because of its historical significance, they've always done it. I love it, right? I love being in the NCAA tournament while following the team race. But again, when there's 10 people on a team and you could literally leave 6 of them at home and still win with 4 people, that's probably not the most ideal way to judge the depth or the how good a team is. So I would love to do them both in the same semester, maybe one in February and one in April, if that's what you're going to go with. I think that would be really cool. But I would be in favor of moving to a 1 semester thing. I would also be in favor of doing a national championship in both, because the other thing there is then, more schools can claim their national champions, which obviously, in one sense, it's kind of stupid, but in another sense, and school administrations are going to love that. They're going to be so ecstatic about that, and that's obviously great for wrestling.
For sure. Yep.
So you pick it. You do the same thing as me. Which ones are you in favor of?
I'm kind of in favor from a student athlete welfare 1 semester sport. I think it's a change, and I think, like you said, with anybody, not only just the sport of wrestling, change is a big thing, and we're so bound by what we know, that I think the traditionalists no, you can't. We've always been a 2 semester sport. It's always been November to March. Well, it could be good. I think most of the time when the leaders of our sport make a dramatic change, even though it's met with early resistance, the long-term gain and benefit has always been a net positive.
Yes.
I think it's worthwhile to see it. Now, I know you would have to plan things out because, I think the NCAA bids are bid out for 3 or 4 years in advance.
Yeah.
So that would be...
Well, that'd be fine. Then we get some preparation for it, right?
Sure.
It's not like, okay, you're doing this tomorrow. It's like, okay, we're going to do this in 3 years. So start prepping, start thinking about the way you're going to do things. I think that would be more helpful than harmful.
Yeah, and you just start incrementally introducing those changes while also like educating the general public about the benefits of going to a one-semester sport. So yeah, I think it would be good. I think there's other things that we could discuss. I know, one of the, the executive committee's meetings was really looking at the merit of the All-Star Classic and if they should.
Oh, cancel that. Thumbs down. Cancel it. It's terrible. Cancel it.
Matt,
we talked last year. I don't think we talked about it, Matt, because it was that bad. I think that's how bad it was that you and I have a wrestling podcast, which we talk twice a week, and the NWCA All-Star Classic was so bad, you and I did not even discuss it.
So
that's bad.
I've got a good friend that's on the executive committee for the NWCA. It would be good maybe to bring him on to maybe shed some light on some of the layers beyond this discussion, because I think it's kind of interesting and compelling, because I think the NWCA, like this, when the NWCA started, the All-Star Classic and National Duels were their signature events for the longest time, right? And that's where they really hung their hat. And I think they're at the point where they're trying to revisit, like, do we really want to? Does one of our signature events? One of them has gone away. National Duels has gone away, at least temporarily. Yep. It'll come back. But the other thing is the prospect of giving up their final signature event, and that's the All-Star.
It's not a signature, Matt. It's not a signature
anymore.
Event.
Not
it's
anymore.
Terrible.
Right?
It's a terrible event. Yeah, it's not a good event. You can do it. Just realize, hey, you're the NWCA. You can do certain things, but one of the things you're not good at is running events. You're not in an events group. Just get out of the space. Totally. You don't have to be in an events group. You only had a couple. Just do other things. Help college programs get added, and stay out of that space.
Yep. I agree.
Is that fair? Am I being a meanie?
No. I think you're calling it like you see it, which that's what I love about you.
Fair enough. Okay, man, I don't have anything else to discuss. I know I am. I'm not promising this. Within the next 2 weeks, I will promise it. I'm going to get Spencer Lee on the podcast. I'm going to see if we can find a time this week that will work for us. If not next week, that should be fun. We actually had him up here at Askren Wrestling Academy a couple weeks ago, and I could only go one of the sessions. And I know I'm not going to lead into it because I'm going to ask him these questions. But there was a few of the answers he gave that really were like, wow, really? Because I got to ask deeper questions about them because I'm just really curious to what his thought process is. Obviously, he's had, he's 2 for 2 in NCAA titles. I think there's a good chance he's going to go 4 for 4. And so I'm just really curious to get what his thought process is. Obviously, I don't know if he'll give us any dirt on the 2020 run, because I think you and I both talked about how hasn't wrestled any freestyle yet, but he hasn't ruled out a 2020 run and how there's only so many opportunities at Olympics you get, and he needs to take all of them. So I think there's a lot of really interesting things that we can ask him about, and it'll be interesting. I'm not going to push him. I'm gonna be real easy. So I'm not going to push him, but I'm very interested to see how open he'll be on some of those things.
I can't wait to hear it. It's going to be fascinating.
Absolutely. So, okay, guys, that's it for us. That was, man, I had a lot of fun with the RTC discussion. That was good. And you know what? I think my perspective leaving this podcast is probably a little different than it would have been coming in about the RTCs.
No, I think it's great. And I think there's even more layers that we could actually get into as well.
Awesome. Okay, and then, I don't know if this matters to you, but we got a week and a half till the RUDIS Wrestling Summit in Marysville, Ohio. So that'll be a lot of fun, too. I'm looking forward to that.
Yep, for sure.
All right, see ya.